Now there's a guy over in 2 Kings chapter 6, turn over there. 2 Kings chapter 6. Strengthened in faith. There's a strong atmosphere here tonight. A faith atmosphere. 2 Kings chapter 6. And let's see. This is just after Naaman, the Syrian, and all that sort of stuff. And then remember Gehazi, he wanted to go after the Naaman and receive some of the spoils. Elisha said, no, we don't want any of your goods, we don't want any of your silver or anything like that. And Naaman got healed, didn't he? And then Gehazi, it says Gehazi's greed, he wanted some silver and stuff. So he shot off after Naaman and got a couple of talents of silver and some things like that, and came back, and Elisha wasn't very pleased about that, and so on. And so verse 8, 2 Kings 6 verse 8 says, now the king of Syria was making war against Israel, and he consulted with his servants, saying, my camp will be in such and such a place. And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. Then the king of Israel sent someone to the place of which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him, and he was watchful there not just once or twice. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. So he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. And it was told him, saying, surely he is in Dothan. Therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. This is the enemy, the Syrians. And when the servant of the man of God, that's Elisha, Elisha's servant, arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots, and his servant said to him, alas, my master, what shall we do? Natural eyes. You know, here was a situation, a circumstance. Elisha was in control. But his servant just saw with the natural eyes that all these horses and chariots had surrounded them. And he's like, alas, master, what are we going to do now? How are we going to bail out of this? And verse 16, so he answered, this is Elisha's response, he said, do not fear. All right? He saw something. He saw an image, and what happened? His heart filled with fear. That's a weak heart, isn't it? It's not a heart full of faith. He said, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open the eyes that he may see. Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. That's interesting, it says they're all around Elisha. That was the kind of protection that Elisha walked in. Probably wherever he went, there was this whole realm of chariots and horses and angels around Elisha wherever he went. But notice how this guy, first of all, he saw in the natural, he saw the enemy. But Elisha said, do not fear. And he prayed that the Lord would open his servant's eyes. And what did he see? He saw into the realm of the Spirit. He saw what Elisha was seeing all the time. And he saw there's more with them than are against them. And so faith came into his heart. And so he was able to act with that boldness and that courage. And the Syrians came down to him, and Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, strike these people, I pray, with blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. So all these angels went to work and caused blindness to come on the enemy. And then it goes on, it's quite a funny story, that they led the enemy right into Samaria. And once all the enemy was in Samaria, which is part of Israel, Elisha prayed that their eyes would be open, and they freaked out when they found out where they were. And the king of Samaria said, shall we kill them? And Elisha says, no, don't harm them. Give them a good feed and send them home. They won't bother you again. And they never did. It freaked them out. And that's the reality of the realm that we live in. There's more for us than are against us. But he saw, Lord, and like I said, I've been praying for us, once or twice a day. Pray that the spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of Him, the eyes of our heart be open, that we may see what is the hope of our calling, and so on. It's about seeing. Seeing what God sees brings faith in our heart. Okay. What about Jesus? You know, without doubt, the most incredible thing that's ever been done on this earth was Jesus going to the cross. And yet He went with courage, He went with boldness, and He even went with joy. Yeah. He went with a joy that was set before Him. And what was that joy set before Him? I believe He saw, not just mental pictures, He saw into the realm where there's no time and space. He saw you. He saw you. He's probably had the option of looking at every single person getting born again for the next 2,000 years. So He saw that. And He went with a heart full of faith, knowing that even though He was going through something terrible, something that He sweat blood, great drops of blood from His forehead in the Garden of Gethsemane, He was locked into the realm of the Spirit, and for the joy set before Him, He endured the cross. And it tells us, you know, we've not resisted to bloodshed. You know, we might think we've gone through some stuff, but we've never got to that point where we've actually resisted sin or resisted going the right way, you know, going the wrong way to the point of shedding blood. But He endured seeing the joy that was set before Him. Joshua chapter 6. Let's go over there. Joshua chapter 6. This is Jericho. Joshua 6, this is just after the commander of the Lord had appeared to Joshua. Remember, Joshua saw this guy with a sword drawn, and he said, "Are you for us or for your enemies?" And he said, "Wrong question." He said, "I'm the commander of the armies of the Lord." And then he said to Joshua, "Take your sandal off your foot, for the place where you stand is holy." And Joshua did so. Now Jericho was securely shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand, its king and the mighty men of valor. Isn't that amazing? In the natural, here was a very secure city. The walls, I can't remember how thick the walls of Jericho were, but they were solid. They might even have been the thickness of this room. They were really, really solid walls. And Jericho was to be their first conquest, if you like. But Jericho was completely shut up. They weren't even coming in and out, so they couldn't even get them that way. And what does God say? God says, "See, I've given it to you." And He says especially, "I've given you the king and their strong mighty men." Because I guess they would have been thinking about the army of Jericho. And God says, "I've given you the city, I've given you the king, and I've given you their mighty men of valor." But He says, "See." And He obviously wasn't talking about these things, was He? He was talking about the eyes of the heart. He says, "See, that city belongs to you. It's your possession. See. You know, and God gives them the strategy. He says, you know, for 6 days, you're going to walk around, the whole bunch of you are going to walk around that city one time without saying a word. You know, the priests are going to go ahead blowing trumpets, the armed men in front of them, the Ark of the Covenant, and then the rear guard, and then the people. And I believe, you know, it was the wisdom of God that He said you're not allowed to talk. Because you can just imagine them walking around saying, "You see how big those walls are? You see how high those walls are? We haven't got any equipment to get through that thing." And you can imagine if they'd put words to what they were seeing with their natural eyes, it would have been a disaster. And even though they might have been thinking that, at least they weren't allowed to speak it. At least they weren't allowed to release it. And so for 6 days, they did it. They walked around. But of course, remember, the trumpets were blowing. So there was a sound of victory. There was a prophetic sound. There was a sound of faith. And I believe they hooked up with that. I believe they got into that realm of faith. And especially on that 7th day when they did 6 times around, and then they did the 7th time and blew the trumpets, and then they had to let out a shout. Yes. And it says the walls fell down flat. They didn't fall inwards or outwards. They fell down to the ground. I mean, that's the miracle of God. I don't know how that works, but the top of those walls became level with the dirt. And they just went straight in and took the city. Totally amazing. So the